and what he'd sometimes thought of as exile, though of course it wasn't. He'd found solace in his work and the good he could do, and gradually his pain had eased. Randolph took a moment to acknowledge the past with a bowed head and then walked on. He wouldn't come this way again. A few minutes later, Randolph reached his original goal, another place he hadn't been in years. Angelo's Academy on Bond Street, next to Gentleman Jackson's boxing saloon. Entering, he heard the familiar sound of ringing steel and murmured commentary. Pairs of men fenced with blunted foils, guided and corrected by the famed proprietor and his helpers. Others worked on their stance or observed. Randolph joined the latter until he was noticed and the owner of the place hurried over. "It's been far too long since we've seen you, Lord Randolph," said Henry Angelo, scion of the dynasty of fencing masters. "And I've probably forgotten most of what you taught me," replied Randolph, "but I thought I'd try a match if it could be arranged." The clash of blades filled him with pleasant nostalgia. He'd spent many a satisfying hour surrounded by that sound. Angelo's was a fashionable gathering place, where gentlemen socialized as well as learned the art of swordsmanship. "Of course, I'd like to see how one of my best pupils has kept up his skills." "You mustn't be too harsh," replied Randolph with a smile. "I had no opportunities to fence in Northumberland." He had practiced the moves now and then, but he'd found no partners in the north. A young man nearby stepped forward. "I'd be happy to oblige." Henry's smile went slightly stiff. "Unnecessary, Mr. Wrentham," he said. "I'll take on Lord Randolph myself." "Oh, but I'd like to try my chances against one of your best pupils." The newcomer spoke with a belligerent edge, as if Henry had angered him somehow. Randolph eyed him. A well-set-up fellow in his 20s with dark hair and eyes. He looked familiar. "We've met, haven't we?" "At Sawbridge," the younger man agreed. "Charles Wrentham." "Of course. You acted in the play." Wrentham grimaced, as if he'd been criticised. "So shall we have at it, then?" Randolph understood from Henry's stance and expression that he would prefer otherwise. But Wrentham's face told him there was no way to refuse without giving offence. Randolph agreed with a bow. Donning fencing gear brought back more memories. Randolph relished the feel of the canvas vest and wire mask. He took down a foil and swished it through the air, feeling old reflexes surface. It was said that physical skills learned as a youth stayed with you, and he didn't think he'd lost his touch. He tried a lunge and parry. Fencing had fascinated him from the moment he'd picked up a sword. The combination of concentration, precision, endurance, and strength exactly suited his temperament, and he'd picked up the skill quickly. Faster than any of his brothers, which added to his enthusiasm, he acknowledged. Here was one area where he outshone them all. Well, except Sebastian, who had a cavalryman's fine slashing style with a sabre from horseback. That was quite a different thing, however. No one fought to the death at Angelo's. Randolph moved to an open space on the floor. Wrentham faced him, raising his foil in a salute. Noting that Henry was hovering and wondering why, Randolph matched Wrentham's gesture and took his stance. Muscle and mind meshed in the old way. He smiled behind his mask. Randolph let Wrentham make the first move to get a sense of his style and skill. The young man came in with a lunge. He overextended, and Randolph parried the thrust. Wrentham pulled back and slashed downward. Randolph blocked the blow, and so it went for some minutes, Wrentham attacking and Randolph easily fending him off. The younger man had some ability, Randolph noted, but he lacked control, and he didn't seem to pay much heed to his opponent. Divining an adversary's next move was half of winning. Satisfied, Randolph went on the offensive. He knocked Wrentham